Howdy Dowdy Bug-Buds, welcome back to yet another storytime video. Today we're going to go back in time to primary school, in particular years 5 and 6. Now, pretty much every school in Australia, well, at least from the ones I've been to, have something known as school captains. So, depending on what school you go to, the number of captains and their respective titles may differ, but in general, they all pretty much follow a similar structure. With my school, the captain body consisted of 2 captains, 2 vice captains, and 4 prefects, so 8 in total. As for their duties, well, all 8 were expected to deliver speeches at the weekly assemblies, set up and take down the equipment for said assemblies, play music to indicate when recess and lunch were finishing, collect merit awards, organise school discos, and get updates from other student bodies, such as the Student Representative Council, aka the Aussie equivalent of US class presidents. There are some other things, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Now, the thing is, a lot of people wanted to be a school captain. Some wanted it so they could use it as an excuse to skip class, whereas others wanted it to buff their resume. That way, they'd have a higher chance at getting into a selective high school. I was neither. In fact, I didn't want to be a school captain at all. You see, I was a teacher's pet, plain and simple. So for me, being captain meant I'd lose valuable study time, even though it was primary school and you didn't really learn much to begin with. Plus, it meant I'd have less time to hang around my friends in class, and I'd lose a small portion of my recess and lunch, so it wasn't exactly something super enticing to me. But, even if I was a teacher's pet, I was also a very, very shameless kid. I know, it's a strange combo. But I was shameless in a way where I still followed the rules. I don't know, it's kinda hard to explain. Like, for example, if I was playing t-ball and some kid went up to me and was like, "Hey, when it's your turn to run, you should pretend to be an aeroplane," I would do it. It's embarrassing, sure, but it was also harmless and didn't break any rules. Anyway, because so many people wanted to be a school captain, we needed 2 stages of voting, with the first vote being exclusively between Year 5 students. Now, as I just mentioned, I originally didn't plan on auditioning, but one of my friends dared me to try out in exchange for $2, which, was a lot for a kid. That's like 10 lollipops worth of money, or 4 bags of chips, or even 2 ice cream blocks. But the dare wasn't just to try out, it was to try out and intentionally stuff up my speech. See, we had to go through 15 other guys and 14 girls. That's 30 people including myself. An entire afternoon of students repeating near identical speeches was bound to get boring, so he wanted to spice things up, even if it was only for a couple of seconds. So I added my name to the list of candidates, and I ended up being scheduled as the 28th person. The girls went first, and to be honest, it was quite an even playing field. Pretty much everyone there had a shot at making it to the next round. The guys, on the other hand, not so much. One of the candidates, Leo, was the younger brother of Lionel, the previous year's vice captain, and they were super duper popular, meaning he was a shoo-in for the captain slot. On top of that, a bunch of his friends also auditioned, so naturally, most people just assumed they'd be the ones to make it to the next round. Especially since Lionel and the rest of the captains began campaigning and going around group to group asking people to vote for his brother and friends. And you might be thinking I was annoyed by this, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Knowing the slots were practically set in stone meant I didn't have to worry about getting selected. Anyway, the guys began delivering their speeches, and not long after, people were clearly starting to zone out. And then it was my turn. I walked right up to the podium and began my speech. And you know what I said? "Hi, I'm Captain and I want to be Percy." Yeah, I messed up the first sentence. But the ironic part was that wasn't even the part I intended on messing up. Originally I was going to say mum instead of teachers, but that didn't matter because now everyone was laughing. And for some reason, this actually made me genuinely embarrassed. Like, the end result was the same, but my kitty brain could only focus on the fact that I messed up my mess up. Once the laughing eased up, I started again, and this time it wasn't too bad. I probably mumbled a stack ton, but I didn't really care at this point, I just wanted it to be over. So I sat back down for the next 2 speeches, and once they were done, it was voting time. Each person, including the candidates, was told to rank the people based on who they wanted to make it to the next round. That way they could narrow down the students to the top 8 guys and the top 8 girls. The girls were told first, and I want to say this made me stressed from anticipation, but I wasn't. At this point I was just happy because there was no way they'd vote for me after I flopped. Then the boys were called out, and bam, to absolutely no one's surprise, Leo was announced first. Then one of his best friends, Dipper, was called, which admittedly everyone expected too. But then they announced the third name, and it was me. I was voted in as a joke. What? So now I had to do another speech in front of the whole school, despite the fact I never wanted to be a captain in the first place. Anyway, we jump forward a week in time to the day of the big whole school assembly. And I was honestly quite nervous. Well over 1,200 people were expected to attend, and there's a big difference between 300 kids my age and 1,200 people, including adults. So the 16 of us were told to decide on the order ourselves, with the girls going first and the boys going straight after. And for obvious reasons, I wasn't super picky about when I had to speak, so I kinda just let the others decide. Now, because Leo and his friends wanted the first 5 slots, and the other 2 wanted the last 2 slots, I ended up as the 6th male speaker, which, was whatever to me. So the assembly began, and one by one the students gave their speeches, and then we get to my turn. I want to say I did something special or said something even remotely interesting for content, but nothing really noteworthy happened. The speech itself was super basic, and in terms of presenting, there weren't any major stuff-ups. I may have stuttered or mumbled some stuff, but nothing out of character for a Year 5 speech. Then, once everyone else finished their speeches, everyone went back to their class to cast their vote. When voting, I made sure to put myself as last in the selection ballot, but because they banned students from talking about who they voted for, I didn't know how I placed amongst the other candidates. After lunch, the ballots were counted, and on the loudspeaker, they named the new school body captains. Once again, the girls had their names called out first, and surprisingly, 2 of my friends also made it in. Then, they began announcing the males, and as you'd expect, Leo was elected captain and Dipper was elected vice captain. Then, the first prefect was announced, and it turned out to be another one of Leo's friends, Toffer. Now, I was also friends with Toffer, so I was proud of him and congratulated him. But as I was, they called out the second prefect, who, you guessed it, turned out to be me. I sat there in complete and utter disbelief. Surely they made a mistake. Surely they named the wrong person. But nope, they repeated the name a second time. I was 100% going to be captain for the school. And at this point, I know I should have been more annoyed. Like, this whole time I've been complaining about not wanting to be one. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I was kinda happy. Maybe I would have been more annoyed if I wasn't close to any of them, but knowing I had friends with me made it seem kind of exciting. Also, if you're wondering how it happened, it turned out that year they decided to do something different. That year, they actually let the teachers have a vote. Apparently, they realised that these elections were essentially popularity contests, as evident by Leo's brother Lionel going around asking people to vote for Leo and his friends. And in order to ensure there was at least one responsible member, they got to elect one. Yep, remember when I said I was a high-achieving teacher's pet? Remember that? Yeah, well, that came back to bite me. Plus, another thing that helped me get in was the fact I was a peer mentor in Year 5. So, in our school, we used to have peer group sessions once a week, where a guy and a girl of each grade were put into a group. Now, the Year 6 students were typically expected to be the leaders of the group, and they were tasked with deciding what activities to do. But in my group, both Year 6 students changed schools midway into the year, meaning I was left in charge of my group. So apparently that demonstrated I had the team leadership qualities they were looking for. And yeah, that's how I became a school captain. Now, I'm gonna admit, I actually really enjoyed this time. I thought I'd feel guilty about missing class, but I actually enjoyed doing other stuff. I guess cause I was always on top of my studies and it was primary school anyway, so it's not like the content was that hard. That said, I had quite a lot of fun memories. Like when we used to spend Tuesday afternoons going around class by class to collect merit awards, or when we'd have to spend Friday mornings setting up the assembly halls. Sometimes we'd even purposely take longer to set up the chairs, that way we could stay at a class a little longer. I mean, I wasn't really into the idea initially, but over time I actually warmed up to it. Another responsibility we had to do was play music. Every day we had to turn music on 2 minutes before class started to indicate when recess or lunch were ending. And to do it, 2 members had to come in and be there. Originally, the role was to alternate between pairs, but eventually the role just fell on me and whoever wanted to tag along. Also, as a disclaimer, this wasn't they're being slackers and were always forcing me to do it. No, I actually liked doing it, even if it did cost me a tiny bit of my recess or lunch. And it's mainly because I got to control the song choice. Now, there weren't many songs to begin with, but I distinctly remember playing Monster Mash a lot. That and that one-eyed, one-horned Flying Purple Peter Eater song. At one point in year 6, the teachers got so sick of listening to the same songs, they ended up asking us captains which songs we'd like. And you know what I asked for? ABBA. Yeah, that 70s band. That's right, your boy got the whole school to frequently listen to Money Money Money, Dancing Queen and Gimme Gimme Gimme. And do I regret it? No, not at all. In fact, they're welcome. Okay, so that's gonna be the end of this video. I know it seems rather abrupt and whatnot, but it's already getting a tad bit long, so you're unfortunately going to have to wait for part 2. And if you want a little bit of a hint, it's going to be about all my scandals when I was prefect. Yeah, the student elected for good behaviour and being a teacher's pet actually turned out to have the most amount of questionable moments, so look forward to that, and I hope to see you soon. Okie dokie, short story while we're still here. Remember back in my very first Uncomfortable Encounters video where I mentioned that I used the name Casey to avoid a scary dude knowing my actual name? Well, that name actually came from this period. Earlier I brought up Leo's brother Lionel, and this guy is actually the one who started calling me that name. See, for some reason he thought my name didn't suit me, so instead he started calling me Casey because apparently that fit better. As for the origins, I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure it was because he was a massive Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. Now, I don't know why, but I actually really like the name. It was like my very own nickname from the most popular guy at school. I know, it's cringy, but I was a kid, okay? And this was the first time I'd ever gotten a nickname. Percy only started getting used a couple years later when all my friends went through a massive Percy Jackson phase. Anyway, that's it. That's the reason I use Casey. Like I said, sweet and simple. With that said, thanks for watching and I hope the bedbugs don't bite. Love you all, bye bye!